RedBridge Group Director, Samaras. So good to talk to you today. There's so much I want to get to, but first of all, is the Prime Minister essentially taking a gamble here? He's lost a bit of skin when it comes to the integrity and honesty stakes, but is he banking on the fact that millions of Australians will vote for self-interest?
I think the last person that you interviewed just then in Frankston, the young woman, summed it up pretty very nicely, and that is, if everyone gets support, then that's a good thing. What the danger with stage 3 was all about for the Albanese government before these suggested changes, it was that they were going to be seen as favouring those with very large incomes at the expense of others. So this recalibration is definitely smart politics.
It's chasing the Labor Green vote, the traditional Labor Green vote, as you would expect this government to do. But what about teal voters, increasingly millennials, inner city types, huge cost of living expenses, but also high wages?
Yeah, that's right. The electorates which harbour some of the largest number of Australians who earn more than 180 a year are indeed, as you suggested, the teal seats, green seats, inner urban Labor seats. What we do know about these voters is that they tend to vote on other issues besides the hip pocket, even if they're struggling. So they're driven very significantly by other issues like climate change and gender equality, and even the voice. So the referendum result, the yes vote was huge in those electorates. So that they're animated by other issues.
Okay, so when you look at the figures and you look at this in a spreadsheet, for example, with the people that'll be benefiting the most, Middle Australia, that is being described, I'm still not quite sure what the definition of Middle Australia is from this government, but if you're looking at what the Treasurer and the Prime Minister are calling Middle Australia, do you bank on those people always voting for this issue that directly affects them?
No, I wouldn't do that entirely. So what the Albanese government is doing here right now is they are running out of their office with band-aids, trying to actually fix a problem which has been underway now for some time, and that is this group that we're talking about, people earning between $80,000 to $120,000 a year, have been moving away from the Labor government and directly over to the coalition. So our public polling, other public polls have indicated that shift, and that's a shift of support for the coalition has been driven by these groups of people in very large numbers in Dunkley. So what the Albanese government is doing right now is sending a very strong signal to them that they are in their corner.
I wonder if this, and I think that will be getting through. It's definitely going to, translate to, I think, a big support over the next couple of months. I guess the question is, can they maintain it all the way to the election? And because doesn't it depend on what alternative the coalition is offering too? Absolutely.
And we know that these voters are in the departure lounge. They're currently sitting on the LNP. They before this announcement were probably going to be the reason why Labor would lose the seat of Dunkley. But we still come back to the problem that the Albanese government has been tackling over the last 12 months, not only a perception that they're not focusing on the right issues, but their comms have not been great, right? So selling this is going to be their biggest challenge.
What about the class warfare aspect of it, the politics of aspiration? I have millennials, which are now the biggest voting bloc in Australia, in mind here. They've got enormous HECS debt. They've been told going to uni is a great idea because they'll get a higher paying job. They've done that. They've probably paid for a house that they can't really afford. They're paying higher interest rates. They're paying, higher cost of living. Inflation is smashing them. They've had their career stalled by COVID potentially, and now bracket creep's really going to swallow up. Now, I don't think when you're going out campaigning that bracket creep is really something that captures hearts and minds. But isn't there a bit of a fairness issue there? What about the politics of aspiration?
Yeah, so here's the thing about aspiration. When we talk to Australians today, the word aspiration doesn't really resonate anymore. Wages are stagnated, so bracket creep as an issue for a lot of these millennials doesn't really bounce hard as an issue. They just think that, well, look, I haven't seen much increase in my wage for years. I'm still casual. Look, this particular group of Australians are disproportionately represented amongst a casual workforce, contract work. They're not happy about the situation. Don't get me wrong. And we can see what's happening here with particularly younger voters, especially under the age of 35. These young Australians are going to the Greens. They're voting for independence. In the outer suburbs, they're shifting to independence and other minor parties, and away from the two major parties. Yeah, so you're not wrong. Absolutely.
Well, that's my point, Cos. Does this really bring them back?
No, it wouldn't. It will bring back millennials who live in the outer suburbs. How big a problem is that? That's a pretty significant problem, and it's a problem we can see right across the Western world, right? You see this in the US. Young African American, young Latino voters are considering voting for Trump. We see that in Netherlands. The surge in the right wing, Geert Wilders' vote was driven by non-university educated young people. So again, this economic dislocation that we're seeing there amongst this generation is driving politics and the change of politics in a very rapid rate.
Yeah. So that all said, I mean, does this change? It's clearly a broken promise. As I said at the start, clearly the government is banking on the fact that this does benefit more people in Middle Australia. But are the gains there for Labor? Does this, from where we sit at the moment, really guarantee victory at the next election? And what do we take from Dunkley and the result there?
Yeah, it doesn't. All it does is it straps on a really strong bandage to stop the bleeding, right? And now really the Albanese government need to...
They were bleeding pretty heavily, were they?
Oh, yeah,
sorry to interrupt. They were bleeding pretty heavily after the Voice?
Yeah, so we saw their primary vote across all polls, including ours, in the low 30s. Some of them put them in the high 20s. That's not a good primary vote, particularly when your vote is stabilising in certain parts of Australia, being the wealthiest parts, but going backwards at a great rate of knots in the outer suburbs. And that's where Dutton was going to drive his victory bus through. And so this helps them tackle that problem. It doesn't solve that problem. They've got a lot of work ahead of them, and really they have to do something which they've not done over the last 12 months, and that'd be absolutely focused on dealing with the affordability crisis that these families are facing, young people, not just in the outer suburbs, not in just Dunkley, but in those other seats that we touched on, the inner-urban electorates as well.
Yeah. Well, if this doesn't answer all the demands of Labor voters at the moment, this new tax policy, what do those Labor voters actually want from this government?
Yeah, when we talk to Australians about, okay, what do you expect from politicians with regards to the affordability crisis, or with regards to, when we're talking about millennials and Zoomers, housing affordability, all those issues. They don't expect miracles, but they do want their politicians in their corner, championing their causes, and there's a huge lack of that going on right now. You can see how Dutton's been trying to actually move into that space over the last 12 months, particularly during the referendum when Labor was preoccupied on that issue and committing an enormous amount of political bandwidth on that issue, and that's cost them a lot. They have to now convince voters that they are firmly in their corner and going to be in their corner. But we've really not seen much evidence of that when it comes to federal politics on both sides. And that's why the major party vote's been on decline now for some time. And I expect the other vote at the next federal election to exceed 6 million. At the last federal election, it was 5.6.
Wow. You're talking about independents like Daly, Western Sydney, and also the Teals?
Yeah, absolutely. We go to Daly, for example. Her vote was largely made up of diverse young people living in that seat. So we know that although their parents might be still voting Labor, they are not. And we're seeing that trend right across the big cities. So we should see, we expect more of that. Fowler was really the canary in the coal mine for the Labor Party. And I don't see any evidence that they've actually turned their attention to that problem either.
Cos, such a fascinating chat. I could talk to you for another hour, but I won't. We'll do it again soon.
Great, thank you.